Even as the Indian data has been positive, the rupee is seeing some pretty flat trades today in the day. This comes on the back of strong US dollar, which gained traction after positive US manufacturing data. The markets, of course, are again talking about the US Fed tapering on when that could start, and that really seems to be impacting most of the emerging market currencies. Let's get in then. Abhishek Goenka, who's founder and CEO, India Forex Advisors, and he joins us live on the show. Abhishek, hi, welcome. While the CAD numbers have been positive, surprisingly positive, so as to say, and we've seen some good numbers come in, as RBI has been pointing out. The Indian equities also have been doing good. Even then, the rupee really hasn't been able to perform today.
So that's very, very clear. I mean, the market is looking at something else. So even though the numbers have been extremely good yesterday in the evening for the India, but internationally, if you look at the US numbers, which came out very good, and the markets was actually looking at that. So despite the positive Indian numbers, the rupee went weak because the market is actually looking at quantitative easing. So if the good numbers of the US is pointing towards maybe early quantitative easing, and that's what the market is looking at. That's the reason the market was kind of flat today on a little bit weaker bias. And I think this particular week, there are a lot of numbers coming in from the US, and I think the market is watching that. Before that, I think it's going to be in the range of 62 to 63. That's going to be the broad range for at least a week, I guess.
So while we are looking at so keenly at the Fed tapering, what's your own sense on when it could really start?
So we as a company, we are looking at somewhere between Jan to March is the period that we are looking at tapering. If the numbers are extremely nice and things look good back in the US, and I think this can start right from Jan onwards. And the entire market feels that it could be mostly in March, but then numbers come out good. This Fed is known for surprises, and it might surprise us once again. So that's our feeling about the tapering. But then we are a little biased towards tapering. So we feel that tapering should happen sooner than later.
Just going by your line of thought then, Abhishek, if that happens, then what kind of an impact would that bring down to equity markets, FI inflows, which we are looking at quite favorably at, and of course the rupee?
So I personally feel that the flows that we have been looking at in the emerging markets lately, and the euphoria we have been seeing in the stock markets across the world is mainly because the QE thing didn't happen in September. But now I think in case the QE actually happens, then it's no rocket science, but there's going to be deleveraging happening across all the global markets. And of course, the markets which will have a huge current account deficit will suffer the most. So, of course, whenever we see a tapering which is more than $20-25 billion happening, then definitely all the emerging markets are going to get hit, and India will not be spared either. So it's not going to be good news for emerging and Asian markets, I feel.
Vijay, what's your sense on the charts though, after the kind of choppiness that we've seen, a flat day in the middle? How does chart, look at that?
Manisha, today was a pretty unexciting day. I would even call it bordering on boring, because the kind of average range that one is used to seeing in the dollar was missing today. The trade was very, very flat, and I would still stick to my view that the appreciation potential for the rupee does tend to be limited. If it does appreciate, I would give it 61. I'm talking of futures rather than cash, so cash markets might be slightly lower. And on the upside, I think the closer it gets to the 63.5 level, the more you will see unwinding of dollars from the short-term leveraged momentum players. So that's the kind of range that I'm looking at. 61, 61.5 on one end, and 63.50 to 63.75 on the other.
Just sticking to the domestic factors yet again, and Abhishek, what's your sense on the interest rates? Because market seems to be working with a hike in December, perhaps in Jan as well. Have you factored that in?
So I feel that, yeah, the interest rates is going to go up, and of course the 10-year bond also, which is kind of corrected a little bit, is again going to inch a little higher. And the US 10-year bonds also, we feel that should hit towards 2.9, 2.95% once the talks of tapering comes close, nearer. So I am a little hawkish on the interest rates part, and that's going to be seen in the future, I guess.
And while the rupee was slightly boring, as Vijay put it, it wasn't the same case in the international markets, Abhishek. If you look at the Japanese yen, that moved quite a bit versus the euro, and we saw the euro itself move quite a bit versus the US dollar itself. How are you looking at these trades?
So overall, if you look at in the recent moves of euro and GBP has been a little positive, Somehow things are a little bit improving in the UK, and they're talking about hiking rates before then 2016, looking at 2015. So overall dollar is, getting a little stronger. A little weaker as compared to these currencies. But then in the medium to longer term, I feel that the dollar will again start gaining momentum. And the dollar index, which is close to around 81 levels, will again start inching towards 83, 84 levels. And of course, rupee was a little lackluster, but then it's good sometimes. It gives the opportunity to build up long trades in the market. It's like that.
All right, Abhishek and Vijay, to you too. Thank you so much for dropping by and for having this very strong conversation on the currency as well as the commodity markets there.